Hello, and a really warm welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for dropping in and having a listen. I'm Laura Hellfeld, one of the associate editors at Autistic Revolution, our online magazine. And I'm here today with two wonderful humans. They are people that are out in the community, making it a happier place, a kinder place, a more inclusive place. And I've got Dr. Tiff Lanza and Dr. Autumn Day with me. And we're going to be chatting our way through their contribution, their chapter contribution, Ready, Willing, and Able, to this amazing book, really a foundation book for anyone working with anyone neurodivergent or disabled, exploring sexuality and disability. I've been enjoying making my way through it. But before we get to it, I realized, so this is my first time getting to chat with Autumn live. And when we set the date for this recording, I was particularly excited, and I had a phrase in my head that kept repeating, and I realized I had to get it out. Otherwise, I wouldn't actually be able to get to our meeting. And I decided, in preparation for our more academic chat, why not make a little bit of a colorful poster? So that was my prep for tonight, and it was Time with Autumn Day. Hooray! Because it was literally repeating in my head over and over. And then took me a beat, but I got you. Time with Dr. Tiff Lanza is always a fun bonanza. Because it's true. It's true. Because I've had the privilege of getting to chat with you live another time, and then we do through social media as well, and to learn about your work. And I felt like I literally couldn't get to the more of our chat without putting those together, because I've been so excited to spend time with both of you. So thank you so much for being here. And as I was saying, if you don't mind, because the two of you do so much incredible work, and then individually you're incredible humans. So your bios are to just read as these most amazing people that I can't even believe I'm friends with. So if you wouldn't mind giving yourselves a little bit of an introduction.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you for including us in this brilliant work that you are doing and for those fabulous posters. We might need to take some screenshots of those at some point before we're done today. So I am Dr. Tiff Lanza. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. And I am a licensed clinical social worker by trade. So I am licensed in 2 states in America, Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And my other side of my career is being a sexuality professional. So I have a PhD and master's in human sexuality. How I started that journey was really focusing on supporting therapeutically survivors of child sexual abuse, especially the littles. I do support adults, but the main focus was the littles. And that journey has unraveled or just went like this in all kinds of communities. And I end up falling into working with the disabled community for years as a behavior and sexuality consultant, and just fell in love. And that was thanks to my honey here, sitting in her office at the time and going, "Oh my God, I need a job," and found this job. And then I walked into it and went, "Wow, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to learn some things." And it was the most impactful job I think I've ever had. So in that world, I was working with autistic individuals, intellectually disabled individuals, physically disabled individuals, and sexuality stuff. And it was just a blast. So since then, now I'm kind of owning slash running a private practice. It's a nonprofit, so it's not necessarily owned, but it's Maverick Therapeutic Services, and we focus on supporting survivors of trauma and the neurodivergent community, LGBTQIA plus community, disabled community. And whenever I say that, I realize like, wow, that's like a lot of niches, because people are like, "What's your niche?" Right? I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of them, but it's like all in one client. So most of my clients are trans, neurodivergent, disabled. Like it's literally every single one of those things, and it's hard to parse them out. So yeah, and on the other side of life, I am a very feisty, barely 5 foot tall. We argue about this all the time because my license says no, 5 foot. And I love to advocate and do things. And I also love naps and I love food. I actually have some rainbow cookies next to me just in case I get a little hungry. And I'm a massive Broadway geek. Anything Broadway. I hope to get to the West End. That is on my bucket list, and see some shows at some point. And yeah, I probably missed like 10 different other things, but I think that's me for now.
Oh, I love how your career has just like naturally flowed. In fact, you've like are finding yourself and your practice. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for sharing.
Hi, I'm Dr. Autumn Day Miller, and I am extremely nervous right now, so I'm just going to own it. Yay.
Yay.
So I have been more recently formally diagnosed with autism and ADHD. Huzzah. And it has been a long time coming. I have a long career of 20 plus years working in sexuality and disability fields and the intersection there. I have had a one-track mind. My bachelor's degree was in a planned studies degree in sexology, where I really wanted to know the research behind human sexuality. And it took a biopsychosocial spin. And then my master's degree in human sexuality education, I got that teaching element under my belt. By the way, I come with sound effects. It helps me process. And, and the doctoral degree, I really wanted to focus on autism and intimacy. This was before the diagnosis, mind you, everybody.
I wonder why.
But that was the best thing I could possibly do, is focus my work in that realm, because the person who was working in the Ken Crest department where Mahoney was hired as a contractor said, I really need to go and get my doctorate, but I don't want to get my doctorate myself. I want to hire somebody with a doctorate. Ta-da!
Yay!
Here I am. Where I was able to take the department because I became my own boss after 3 months, 2.5 really, and took the department and changed it from where it was, which was pretty radical in the behavioral health supports world for disabled folks, and just revamped it completely slowly over time to become, and I'm going to say this slowly because I trip over this if I don't, trauma-informed, culturally sensitive, relational theory based, systemic, holistic, behavior, sexuality, communication, etc. therapeutic supports. So,
Wow.
but I love it, and I love my crew, and I think they all know how much I care about them because I send them heart emojis all the time. Boundaries, don't worry. We've talked about this. In fact, one of my favorite sayings is professionally love you. And it's really made my life in phenomenal ways. I've found a purpose and a place of being, but there is still a lot of that crossover because I do a lot of LGBTQIA plus inclusivity in my work. We're both on the Montgomery County LGBT Business Council board. Yeah, and a partridge in a pear tree. And there's a lot more to what I do. And I do a lot of writing. And I love that your posters rhymed, because I do song parodies in my head on a regular basis, even when I don't ask them to be there. So yeah, hi.
Hi. Remember when you were
Autistic Revolution magazine parody.
We do. We don't have one yet.
Start thinking.
We need a theme song.
Yes.
I already never mind. I will leave it at that. There's a revolution song that I can go with. I got you.
You got
Sorry.
it. You got it. There we go. Remember when you were nervous to do your bio, and then now we're hiring you to do our theme song. So
Tuesday.
that's just the way that these interviews go. Amazing. Amazing. So I was curious then about, if we start off with your chapter. Oh, you have one too.
We did. We brought ours.
Oh, we have three. It's like they just keep multiplying. I only have one here. But you're ready.
Hold one up yet, so
Yeah, get the cats their own. Yes, they're ready, willing, and able. So the two of you co-wrote a chapter in this book. And I was curious, should we start off with how you got involved in the project?
Yeah, so we have brilliant friends who know what we do, and thankfully just let people know what we do and connect us. So our brilliant friends had connected us with Dr. Shanna, who was the editor of this book, and I would like to say their full name, but my white mouth will butcher it. So I'm going to go with Dr. Shanna for right now. And they are, I believe, out in one of the M states. And I'm going to blank on which M state. Wow, I should have prepped this.
yeah.
But anyway, so our friends had talked to Dr. Shanna, was like, hey, we have folks who do sex and disability work. And if you're interested, we could connect you to add to this book. And this book is really a compilation of so many brilliant professionals. Like the first couple pages just lists everybody's little bios and things. And the goal was really to have so many voices within all these different topics within sex and disability, because I mean, just that alone has so much in it.
Yes.
So Dr. Shanna reached out and was like, "Hey, y'all interested?" And we're like, "Yes." And then of course that was my yes, because hey, the ADHD and impulsivity, right? I'm like, "Yes." And then I went to Honey, like, right? And she's like, "Uh-huh."
I already said yes.
Yeah, basically. And so I mean, really, Shanna is amazing. They really set us up for success. It was completely supported and accessible process. They had deadlines set out already. They had not only the deadlines, but then like, okay, these are the steps you can take within those deadlines, and really just prepared a space for everybody to go, okay, I can do this. And just throughout the process was there, supporting, but also writing themselves. So there's chapters that they have written and co-wrote in the book as well. They're just an amazing disability advocate with lots of lived experience and just a phenomenal human. So we are just so honored to be a part of that, and so lucky that our friends don't mind pimping us out or prostituting us out, or I don't know what the word is there, but and very consensually, but all the things.
It's an
I
amazing project.
Mhm.
one of the things that I don't think a lot of folks who contribute to an edited anthology get to be a part of is even just the picking of the cover. And they had us vote, all of us vote for the cover image based on some limitations that they had in what was available. But even just that, just
That's
really
so lovely.
like a
Yeah.
crew.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It sounds like she's really good at just like an actual team of people to put together this incredible resource.
Yes, yes. And so the only thing that's lingering now is they had encouraged us all to do a photo shoot with our book. And because all the authors are like literally all over, I think the country, I'm not sure the world, but at least the country. So thankfully, Dr. Shanna has started that off with some beautiful, beautiful photos. So that's our next step in the book, is doing a silly photo shoot or a sexy photo shoot or whatever kind of photo shoot.
Whatever kind of photo shoot comes out. That's excellent. It's excellent. With your chapter then, what is like the aim of your chapter? What were you hoping to accomplish?
Well, one of the things that we saw as what we could offer, because there's a lot of different disability focuses that you can take, but we really have heavily worked in intellectual disability and autism throughout our careers. And Shanna had said, can you do something specifically on the sexuality education component? And we were like, yes, 100%. We are so ready. And that's kind of where the idea for the title came from. And just looking at it from the perspective of how would you teach this? Because this is supposed to be very much a textbook, but a textbook that is accessible to everyone. If you want to just pick it up and read it as a parent, as a person out at Starbucks looking for something good to read. And the structure of the chapter was really key. You could give case examples, you could do whatever, but something needed to be application based.
Mhm.
And I was stoked. I know Honey was like, you want to do what now initially with the lesson plan, but I was stoked about the idea of teaching people to adapt. And that was really the focus of stop thinking about education as this tiny little square and having it be nothing more than that. So when we said yes, it was a passion of years of our work. Like, how do we condense it in just a few pages and make it fit with all the resources? But that was really why we were so excited about this specific focus.
And one of the ways that we work really well together is because of the differences of our brains.
Mhm.
So I am what Autumn has affectionately called the just do it kind of person, either therapist or educator. So if you're a Nike fan, just do it, right? Yes, I used to work for Nike, so that's where that came from. So when I had first stepped into that role that I mentioned in my intro about getting into behavior and sexuality work, I realized that I was getting asked questions that for me were like that moment when you talk to a dog and they're like, what? That I didn't know why, I didn't know how to answer. So one of the questions that I would get asked is, how do you teach someone who doesn't speak or who can't talk? Or how do you teach sex ed then to this type of community? And my question would be, what type of community? Like humanity? Well, you just do it, right? And so that's how my brain works as far as this community, the disabled community, the neurodivergent community, anything under that umbrella, you just do it. And the way you just do that is you talk to the human in front of you and figure out, with what you know, how do you translate that to their need? And then that's where Autumn comes in. Here's what I know. Help me translate that to the masses. And so that's where we end up pairing really well in trying to create a usable lesson plan, for example.
I think that came off really well as someone reading it. Like, I loved how you even divided it into the different roles and how I read it. So like, it was the caregivers and educators of that idea of, actually, Autumn, you mentioned it, like the education's this little box. So then it kind of is like, well, you have the accountability because it's in this little box. But instead, your chapter is really going, actually, all of us have that accountability. And here's how in your role as a paid professional or a teacher or the parent will now do it. Like, we all are accountable for this work. I love that.
It really is something, having spent sometimes way too much of my life focused on human sexuality, it really is something that lives like water throughout our lives. Like, we take in messages as early as humanly possible through that tangible element, the touch, and get messages about our bodies and fold and fold and fold. So I'm like, how do I translate that into chunking? And I remember us having a big conversations like, how are we going to piece this apart so it isn't too much to the reader? And so my brain wanted to do initially like developmental stages, and then we were like, oh Lord,
we had this many words.
right? Like, so it felt really safe when we were starting to narrow things down. Like, how do we scope it? How do we scope it? To talk about the people involved and who are in their chunk, in their region of how they interact with that human being. How are they accountable for doing the good without doing it alone?
And if we can't teach that thing that I can't articulate, the just do it thing, right? Can we at least give them some stability or grounding in the actual technique that hopefully that translates to, this is no different than interacting with any human in front of you. When it comes to human sexuality, this is a lived experience by every single human being in this world. You're just articulating that in a way that language meets language with the person in front of you.
You can tell that so much thought has been put into it. Just like even listening to you now too, I'm like, oh, there's even more layers behind why you did what you did. Because knowing I wanted to chat to you about it, I of course read it and reread it, and then kind of went through to make sure, okay, I know I could have intelligent questions to stay back or sound, make sure they know I read it. And then so to hear how much the years of your experience going behind it and really making sure, really wanting everyone to find that accessible, because it is so true. If parents get so nervous to talk the subject alone, people get nervous, and it's easy to go, we'll let them learn that in that classroom. We'll let them teach it over here, or just assume that this will not ever be a part of what this young person or adult person will need, and just not face it. And I think your chapter is really inviting people to go, just like you said, this already affects this person. It's already happening. So what can we do? What meaningful steps can you do? And use that word of like, and then not alone, like, and realizing, oh, wait, if everyone else in these roles, actually, that's who I should be reaching out to. It should be this team together.
And the importance of people who have gone through years and years and years and years of training to answer the heavy lift questions, or to manage a situation that comes up that needs a little more nuancing. So I swear that wasn't just a dive. We're plugging things.
Yes. Oh, I thought there was a cat.
No, apparently our electric on this side wasn't working. So I'm trying to figure out how to make sure we don't die. So please keep talking. Okay. I apologize.
So it has come to fruition that a lot of agencies that don't have some pretty hefty background in human sexuality have taken on major roles in training the average folk who are doing more of that direct support role, or maybe some management in the disability supports field, are saying that now, after a day or two of training, people are ready to do all the sexuality education whatsoever. And that's a little scary. In
I don't know about
fact,
any education I would feel ready for, let alone something so personal.
exactly, exactly. And so what we were hoping is that this sort of breaks down, you have a role, get that training under your belt so that you're ready for the wild questions that will come at you. Because the one thing a curious mind does is explore the so what if, right? And the really scary, you're like,
Uh,
oh, and just helping folks have some context, and it's still not making the little lightning thing. It's not. What is happening?
Sorry, Laura, we're
it's okay.
gonna check the technical difficulties first. So please continue. I'll keep working on it.
So the idea is that if there is something that is a much heavier lift, a specific focus, if there's big scary sexual behaviors that are occurring, you want to reach out to people that have that additional layer of degree education when those moments hit. But you can still help in those circumstances because you have the responsibility of practicing the necessary skills to put to use that are taught, etc. So it was trying to put it in layers, and I think Honey just won a cookie. Did you win a cookie?
You get it. Apologies for the disruption.
Not at all. Do you need to celebrate with one of your cookies?
Oh, I'm gonna have a bite of cookie. Thank you. Yes.
'Cause that's what I would be doing. If I was like, I just solved some sort of tech issue. Yeah, we're having biscuits.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I just did a whole lot of talking. You have to do some talking.
I can. What about talking?
Okay. I think if anything else to be prepared was the idea of like I feel like Autumn, you kind of did this. So I don't mean to have anyone repeat anything, but like takeaway points from it, and to kind of entice someone to read the whole chapter.
So I think professionally, I go back to that statement of what do I do is always the question, right? I can have trainings for hours upon hours about communities and supports, and then they go, yeah. Well, what do I do? I literally just told you what to do. But it's really trying to attune to the brains that might not see that through explaining what a community needs, right? So to say a community needs accessibility to this education, one, that just means they need to be able to have it, right? And if we already know that, for example, American school systems are not consistent in sex ed or how they define sex ed, for example, let alone our caregivers, our parents, our siblings, like who is actually providing this education out there? So one, it's that accessibility, but then the second accessibility is how are you talking to the person about this, right? How are you showing them what these things mean without going way too far with either language or examples that don't meet that person's need or, again, like their way of thinking. So if we look at page 193 of the book, we tried to list like the best practices on how to engage with the folks as best as possible when trying to open up a dialogue around being ready, willing, and able to talk about sex education. So what that also means is for the person who is taking over the role of educator, or we can even say just like the role of like the support role to it, because maybe that person isn't, spending $100,000 plus on sex degrees, for example, like the two of us. How can you understand that the concept of human sexuality truly is just a person's lived experience? So one of the foundations that Autumn and I absolutely adore is Dr. Dennis Daly. Unfortunately, rest in peace. He passed recently. His circles of sexuality. So breaking down the circles of sexuality, there's 5 circles of sexuality. And although that model has been adapted for so many things, faith, disabilities, et cetera, the foundation is still there. That we have 5 layers of our sexuality experience, from sensuality to intimacy to gender identity, to reproductive health and sexualization. And within those 5 circles, you have subcategories of every possible topic that can be hit within sexuality. So one of the examples I try to use to explain that very simply is when somebody asks, oh, what's your sexuality? I say, which part? Are you talking about who I'm married to? Are you talking about who I sleep with? Are you talking about my identity? Which part are you talking about? So what we wanted folks to get out of this, at least one, was you can have language to that, whether or not you have a sexuality degree. Would you add to that?
Some of the takeaways. So just the idea of adaptation and the ability to pivot is the most crucial piece. It's not about a yes or a no. Can you educate? Can you not? It's how do you educate? Everyone is educable. Everyone. It's just, is the person standing in front of them prepared to give that education? And I'm not putting it just on teachers by any means. Most of the poor teachers in these schools have no concept of human sexuality other than what they learned in social media and through their peers, right? So it's just taking that second and going, okay, if this person is most attuned to learning through music and rhyming, we're going to have a sexual safety song and we're going to write that sexual safety song together.
Which we did. I think one of our teachers actually did with us. It was like, no, don't touch me there. This is my no square or something like that, to kind of like
Absolutely.
say, this is my no square, from like this point to this point is my no square kind of thing. And it was a beautiful way to do that. And the kids loved it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they're going to remember that.
Yep.
Right? Like they
Yep.
can take, it's like, that's very meaningful education for that person, because that's something that they will take in with them, that they had that feeling of, this educator really worked with me and this is really important, and it's going to go with them forward. Oh, so fun.
An example that actually highlights some of what Autumn's explaining that I had was, I was contracted through a school. It was an elementary school. And they were like, can you come in and teach our kindergarten class some like sex education? And of course I asked the question, like, what do you mean by that? Right? Like there's a lot there. And so understanding that sex education is lifelong, from birth to end of life. Developmentally in elementary school, my brain immediately goes to boundaries, consent, right? Think the healthy relationships, starting to differentiate types of relationships, like, no, your teacher is not your mom or your dad or your parent, right? And so that's where, like, yeah, as I was talking, like, yeah, that's where we want to go. Fantastic. Tell me a little bit about the kiddos. Oh, they're great. I said, okay, besides the fact that they're great, do they write? And if they do, how do they do that? And do they color? If they do, how do they do that? And they're like, oh yeah, they can write, they can draw, they can do all kinds of things. Fantastic. So what do? I head over to Michael's, a local craft store, and I load up on all kinds of things. I get my lesson plan together. I walk into the room and I look around and I'm like, wow, you don't know your students. And I stood there for a second, like trying to not like, be paralyzed in fear. Like, here, I just prepped something. The students were at the most 18-month cognitive level, which means no, they don't write in the way that we talk about writing, or no, they don't color in the way that we talk about coloring, which is totally fine and adaptable. But I think one that highlighted to me, there is a complete disconnect in how students are seen within special education, for example, within schools, that actually misaligns to what they're contracting in for these special types of topics. So literally in that moment, I think I was texting you like, and I'm screwed. I took my bag off. I sat with the kiddos and I just went with it. I went with my gut. I looked around to see, okay, I see this person's able to move, so we could do some movement over here. I see this person is really into coloring in circles with their holding their pen or their crayon like this. Okay, I can work with that. So literally within seconds, I was observing and data collecting to be able to then put on a lesson and not just turn around and walk out, or provide a lesson that would not do anything.
Right. If you had stuck with it, it would have gone over their heads, and it's not education then.
Completely.
Yeah.
And these rooms typically have paraprofessionals, so supports that are helping the kiddos along with the teacher. So I also was seeing how they were interacting. So for an example, they were trying to teach hand over hand cutting, and the person was leaning with the student in front of them over them. So their breasts were sitting on the student's head. And I'm like, so let's talk about this and how we can do this a little bit better, because at some point that's going to be more than just how you're sitting. So let's prep this kiddo for success. So I use that example because I think that was one of the most impactful pieces for me as an educator, as a therapist, as just a person, being able to see how these kiddos are so stuck going through a neuroconforming world that people are missing out on all of the actual things that they need and can do to be able to translate that to the educators.
Yes. 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 You're pointing to like, there's all these little things to do. You're not necessarily asking all of us to somehow put on these lectures like you do, but like you were saying, Autumn, of like, but there are other things that we can do, really meaningful, small things we can do, and just start picking away at those. And then when it is some of these bigger topics, or we realize I actually don't know enough about that, I'm feeling okay with that and saying, let's go find this resource instead.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And it's that the reinforcement element. So we all know, if you don't practice a skill, if you don't play with a new tool, you're going to forget how some of it works. So when somebody's taught a new series of words or phrases and how they align with self, reinforcing that, like, oh, let me ask for your consent here. And just reinforcing that language. It might not have hit the first time around when it was taught, but just practicing some of that day to day is what makes all the difference. And that's where we really need everyone's investment.
That's such a good point. Such a good point. And I think I end up with that when people say to me, well, how do you have these conversations with your kids already? And I go, how do you not have it around just like the physical boundaries with kids? Because they're always touching everybody and each other and knocking each other. They're constantly doing that. So I think I was like, it just starts from there, doesn't it? And just if you can add in some of that language already, I think that's
well,
what yeah.
this meets your profession actually. So we both use the model that circles of sexuality I mentioned for both of our dissertation studies. And there's one topic that I love, and that topic is skin hunger under the sensuality bubble of the circles of sexuality. However, if you look at any of the research, skin hunger research is only in nursing journals.
Well, I don't know why.
Right. Well, typically
That's
it's around
interesting.
like
I was going
neonatal.
to say that sounds like neonatal, like the skin to skin, which
Yep.
remains very important beyond just baby, but our social, yeah,
Yep.
doesn't like to reinforce all that and the sleeping near people and stuff. So
Exactly.
yes. Oh, that's fascinating. I feel like now I'm like, okay, after this chat, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Now I know what I'm going to go look at. Okay, thank you.
Anytime. We're here to make more work happen.
That's so awesome. This has been so good. And I was just realizing had meant to check in a little bit earlier, and actually the time has gone by really fast. So before we kind of like start to wrap up though, we'll make sure we tell people where to get the book. But is there any like last bits? Is there a last bit that you're like, oh, I really wanted to say this during this interview? And if not, that's okay. We can just go right into where to get the book.
I'm going to assume you need a second to think.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to just go back to recognizing the power within the topic of human sexuality. This is a lived experience that has been neglected on purpose for power and control within the systems created. And we need to break those systems. One, because of incredibly harmful legislations that have been going on for the past couple of years and really harming people. But just recognizing this is a human existence, just like breathing is human existence. And everybody has the capacity to teach, train, and understand it. And everybody has the capacity to learn it.
I love that.
Okay. Slightly outside of the chapter, but absolutely in correlation. If you don't understand human sexuality, fear it, have a lot of value judgments, quick and hard walls. I keep thinking of like a runner's wall, and you bring up sexuality and immediately you have a halt. All I ask is that you take a second and remember, this is actually more about the world changing its mind than about you changing your mind. You can continue to have your personal values. No one's going to come at you. It's about you recognizing there's a shift that has to happen amongst all of us to include us all, and still we can be us.
I got goosebumps. Like my arm just got that tingly feeling. That was beautiful. That was really beautiful. I'm glad you thought on that for a moment. So thank you, Tiff, for going first. That was beautiful as well. Because I know it was a little bit of put on the spot, but I want to make sure if there's any last bits That way you end it going, that felt complete, because there's also that trait too, right? So you're not just up all night tonight going, I didn't say that last thing. Oh, anyway, this has been so much fun and so informative. And if anyone wants to learn any more, so exploring sexuality and disability, I got it on Rutledge, and I
Mhm.
think Amazon now maybe, and was it
Yep.
Abe?
Abe Books has it, and I'm sure others do. But if you Google "Exploring Sexuality and Disability: A Guide for Human Service Professionals," the multitude comes up. So if you are not wanting to give money to Amazon, we totally and utterly respect that. So Abe Books, I believe, is more of a smaller company that would be benefiting from that, or potentially any local bookstores. If you have a local bookstore in your area, if you ask them to search that, they can also
Oh yes,
get it.
have them bring it in. Thank you
Exactly.
so much, the two of you. I feel like now I'm in my weird transition time where I'm like, oh no, ending things is difficult. So
Well,
I don't want
you
to
for
say
giving us
goodbye.
this opportunity. So thank you for the
Oh,
time.
thank you so much for spending this time with me and for sharing everything with everyone. I think it's going to be really, really helpful, again, because it's a topic that I think a lot of people just haven't had access to. So thank you for being the people, and potentially we might just like need to keep the conversation going.
We're okay with that.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.